Welcome to Cleophey Podcast. Today, we discuss the proper etiquette of dua. Ask Allah sincerely, but never try to bind him with conditions or bargains. We're excited to announce a major expansion, a separate podcast in Hindi and Urdu for our large audience in India. Link below. Now, let's transition to our main segment, a deep dive with Jack and Wilson. Please like and subscribe to help us spread our message globally.
All right, welcome back to the deep dive. We're here to take all that amazing source material you've sent us and, really boil it down to the insights that stick.
And today's topic is a big one.
It really is. Our mission today is to get into the etiquette, the proper way of asking the divine for more.
Which is such a human thing to do, right? We all have these moments where we need a breakthrough, maybe even a miracle. But the question is, how do you even approach that?
Exactly. And the sources we're looking at today come from an Islamic perspective on dua, which is the act of asking. And we're going a bit deeper than just, what should I ask for?
Right. We're really getting into the how. What's the line between asking with real faith and just making a demand, a transaction?
And that line, that boundary seems to be everything. We're going to try and unpack the principles, the right mindset, and why some ways of asking are actually seen as, an attitude of failure.
Which is a powerful phrase. And I think the best way to set the stage for this is with a really surprising detail from the sources.
Oh, yeah. This was fascinating.
It mentions that even the prophet wished he hadn't asked a certain question.
Right. And when you hear that, it immediately tells you this isn't just about, listing off your wants. There's a real art to it, a spiritual etiquette.
It forces you to realize that this is a relationship. It's about context, about adab, or proper conduct. If there's that much nuance for someone so revered, then there's definitely something for all of us to learn.
Okay, so let's start there. With all this caution, does that mean we should hold back? Maybe we should limit what we ask for out of humility or something.
It's funny you say that because the foundational principle is the complete opposite. It's incredibly generous.
Oh.
The sources are clear. There's absolutely no limit to what you can ask for. The prophet's instruction was, ask Allah is more.
Ask Allah is more. I love that. It's so direct. It just cuts through any shyness you might feel.
Absolutely. The whole idea is that there's no scarcity on the divine's end, no lack of ability, no lack of willingness. So being shy, the sources say, is actually discouraged. You should be asking for the absolute highest levels of everything.
So the capacity is infinite, so the ask should reflect that.
Exactly. But, and this is the crucial but we found.
There's always a but.
There's a precondition.
Yeah.
It's really hard to appreciate getting more if you don't even recognize what you already have.
Okay, so it's not about lack. The asking has to come from a place of gratitude. If it's just a complaint about what you don't have, you've kind of missed the boat already.
You've missed the entire point. And
yeah.
That's a perfect lead-in to our next section, because that internal state you're in when you ask, that motivation is everything.
Right. The sources pointed to two very different places this ask can come from.
Two completely different mindsets. One is, let's say, corrosive, and the other is based on confidence.
Let's talk about the corrosive one first. I think a lot of us can relate to it. It's asking from a place of frustration.
That's the person who's been making dua for months, maybe years. And their whole internal feeling is just, oh, Allah, where is it? I'm asking. I'm doing my part. Why isn't it here yet?
It's that demanding approach. It's focused entirely on the gap between what I want and what I have.
It's almost like a celestial vending machine, right? I put my prayer in, and I'm waiting for my specific snack to drop.
So how do you get past that? How do you get to that second, more successful state?
Well, that's the state rooted in satisfaction, in fulfillment. This is someone who asks for more, not because they're complaining, but because they're already operating from a place of trust.
So even if the answer isn't exactly what they wanted or when they wanted it,
they feel fulfilled. They trust that they've actually received more than they asked for, even if they can't see it or perceive it yet. It's a total shift in perspective.
You go from being an anxious customer to a confident beneficiary.
That's a great way to put it. And the ultimate example of this in the sources is the story of the prophet Zachariah.
Right. He was asking for a child, but he was incredibly old, and his wife was barren. It was, biologically almost impossible.
If anyone had a reason to be desperate, it was him. But that wasn't his angle at all.
So what was his rationale?
His reasoning, as it's captured in the Quran, was basically a statement of his past experience. He essentially said, "My Lord, I'm asking for this huge thing because you have never once let me down. I've never felt rejected when I've turned to you."
Wow. So he based his most extreme request on a history of grace, not on, I need this now, but on, you are always generous.
Precisely. His ask was an act of worship built on confidence, not on frustrated need. And that's the perfect setup for where we're going next, because the opposite of that is the transactional demand.
And this is where it gets really interesting because the sources are so clear that this conditional asking it's just seen as spiritually unsound.
They call it that attitude of failure.
Yeah. So let's break down that conditional trap. What does it actually sound like?
It's that explicit quid pro quo, the negotiation. Oh Allah, if you give me this promotion, or if I get to marry this person, then I promise I'll quit this sin, or I'll start praying more.
It's a bargain. You're trying to make a deal. And from a human standpoint, you can see the logic. You're tying a strong desire to a difficult obligation.
It seems like a good motivator. But the sources view it so negatively because you're essentially trying to dictate terms. You're implying the current relationship isn't good enough.
And didn't the sources say that conditional statements in the Quran are usually framed negatively?
Almost always. They're usually statements of regret. You know, if only I had another chance, I would do things differently. Or if you had guided us, we would have been righteous. It's the language of people who fail to act when they have the chance.
I see it now. The if is the language of failure.
It is. So when you apply it to repentance, for example, the flaw is that you're suggesting you didn't feel the need to repent or pray or be charitable until some new big reward was dangled in front of you.
Which begs the question.
Hasn't the divine already given you enough motivation, your life, your health, your family, to do what you're supposed to be doing right now?
So if I say, I'll only stop doing this bad thing if I get the job, I'm basically saying my life right now isn't a good enough reason for me to be a good person.
Precisely. You're saying the divine hasn't provided enough justification for your worship yet. So that's why it's called an attitude of failure.
Yeah.
The whole relationship gets reduced to a cheap contract.
But okay, let me push back on that for a second. What about someone who's really struggling? With a really bad habit, and they feel like they just need a sign, a big win, to get the strength to finally quit. Is that hope also a failure?
That's a really important distinction. Hope is never the problem. The difference is in the sequence. Are you promising to act in the future as payment for a sign? Or are you starting to act right now, sincerely, and then asking for a sign to help you along?
So start the good deed first, then ask for help. Don't withhold the good deed until you get the reward.
That's the successful approach, which leads us perfectly to the counterexample, the model for how to ask when you're truly stuck and need a miracle.
And this is that amazing story from the Hadith.
The story of the 3 men trapped in the cave. This is the absolute masterclass in how to ask.
So for anyone who doesn't know the story, a huge rock rolls down and completely seals the entrance to a cave these 3 men were in. They're trapped.
They're facing certain death. And their strategy is what's so critical. They don't make promises about the future. They don't say, if you move this rock, we'll build a hospital.
They don't fall into that conditional trap.
Not at all. Instead, they each make a desperate plea, a dua, based on a purely sincere act of worship they performed in the past.
So they relied on existing unconditional sincerity. They cashed in a moral chip, so to speak.
A chip they earned without ever knowing they would need it.
Let's get into those 3 examples, because the details are everything. What was the first man's act?
The first man talked about his devotion to his elderly parents. He had a habit of always serving them milk before anyone else in his household, even his own kids.
Okay.
One night, he gets the milk, but he finds them asleep. And instead of waking them, or just giving the milk to his hungry children,
What did he do?
he just stood there, holding the bowl of milk all night until dawn, waiting for them to wake up naturally. His plea was, if I did that purely for your sake, then help us. The sincerity was in the silent, unseen sacrifice.
That's incredible. It wasn't about a grand gesture. It was about the purity of that one difficult, unconditional choice.
Exactly. And the rock moved a little bit, but not enough. So the second man stepped up. His story was about integrity.
What was his act?
He talked about a cousin he was deeply in love with who had always rejected him. But one day, out of desperation, she came to him and agreed to be with him in exchange for a lot of money.
Okay, so he paid her.
He did. And just as he was about to commit the sin, she said to him, "Fear Allah."
And what happened?
He immediately got up, left all the money with her, didn't touch a cent of it back, and walked away.
Yeah.
His sincere act wasn't just avoiding the sin. It was giving up his desire and a huge sum of money, purely out of awe for the divine, at the last possible second.
He had every opportunity and had already paid the price, but he still walked away. That's a whole other level of sincerity.
It is. And the rock moved again. But still not enough for them to get out.
So it was up to the third man.
And his act was about financial honesty. He'd hired someone who did a job, but then left without collecting their wages.
I think a lot of people would have just pocketed that.
He didn't. He took that small amount of money and invested it for the man. He bought livestock, and over the years, it all grew into a huge herd.
Wow.
Years later, the worker came back for his original small wage, and the third man just pointed to a whole valley full of animals and said, "All of that is yours, your wage and all its growth."
Now, you could have just given him the original amount, or maybe a little interest, but he gave him everything.
Everything. And the crucial point for all three of these men is that when they did those original deeds, served their parents, walked away from the sin, invested the wages, they had no idea they'd one day be trapped in a cave.
They weren't doing it to save up for a rainy day.
Not at all. Their actions were completely pure and unconditional at the time, and that past sincerity was the currency they used to move the immovable rock.
That just flips the whole model on its head. Instead of promising a future good deed for a future reward, they were saying, I already did a good deed purely for you, so based on that established relationship, please save me now.
It's proof that the most powerful ask isn't based on a desperate promise, but on a history of genuine, quiet integrity.
So to sort of bring this all together for everyone listening, the core idea here is that a successful ask, especially for something big, a miracle, comes from a place where you already feel satisfied. You recognize what you've been given.
Right. And you lean on your sincere actions from the past rather than falling into that attitude of failure by trying to bargain with your future obligations.
If your good deeds are all conditional and getting something new, you've kind of missed the point of faith.
You've missed the unconditional nature of it. Absolutely.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you to take away from this deep dive. If a person is already doing what they're supposed to be doing, consistently without needing a special prize, does that constant, quiet, unconditional sincerity become its own kind of power?
Does living that life of daily, sincere effort actually pave the way for a miracle much more effectively than any last-minute desperate bargain ever could?
Something to think about.
Definitely.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll catch you next time.
Thank you for joining us for today's podcast. I hope you've gained some valuable insights. If you're a truth seeker, yearning for divine light and ready to step out of darkness, now is your moment. The truth is that Allah is the one and only creator of the universe. He has sent over 124,000 messengers and prophets to guide humanity, starting with Adam and culminating with the final messenger, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon them all. If you resonate with this message, you might be ready to embrace Islam. Simply recite the Shahada, the Islamic declaration of faith. For further support, feel free to join our WhatsApp group. You can send us a private message there. The link is in the video description. Don't wait until it's too late. We look forward to connecting with you soon.